I noticed her because of the way she held the milk, not like a regular shopper, lazily tipping the gallon into the cart with one hand while scrolling her phone with the other. She held it with both hands, pressed close to her chest, like it was something fragile and too important to risk dropping. Her fingers were red from the cold. Her coat was too thin for a Chicago winter, and the boy beside her tugged on her sleeve every few seconds, as if scared she might disappear. I was standing in line at the Jewel Osco on the corner of Clark and Division, just another man in a dark wool coat, leather gloves, and a scarf that probably cost more than the items in most people's carts. Snowmelt clung to my shoes, making a small, dirty puddle on the tiled floor beneath me. The loudspeaker hummed with some generic pop song about love and freedom, while people argued with coupons and reward cards. I was thinking about nothing, really. Numbers, meetings. A property I'd been looking at in Lincoln Park, how the wind off the lake had cut straight through my suit earlier that day. Just normal things. My brain was on autopilot. Then I saw the cashier's expression change. It was subtle. She straightened a bit, her lips pressing into a tight line, eyes softening with a mix of pity and discomfort I recognized instantly. I've seen that face before, when someone is about to ask for something they feel ashamed to ask. The woman with the milk stepped up to the counter. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, the kind that says she used to care about how she looked, but lately survival outran vanity. There were dark circles under her eyes, the kind you don't get from staying up late watching TV, but from staying up late worrying. Her jeans were clean, but faded at the knees, and the boots on her feet had cracks along the sides where water probably seeped in when the snow turned to slush. On the counter, she placed the gallon of milk, a small bottle of children's cough syrup, and a box of generic cereal. The cashier scanned the items, the beep of the scanner cutting through the low murmur of the store. The woman pulled out her wallet, one of those worn, cheap ones with peeling edges, and unfolded a few crumpled bills with slow, deliberate fingers, like each one was a decision. "Total is $22.78, the cashier said. The woman swallowed. I could see her throat move from where I stood, 3 customers back. Can you take the cereal off?" she asked quietly. The cashier nodded, avoided eye contact, deleted the cereal. 18.49. Another pause. The boy tugged at her sleeve again. "Mom, can we—" "Shh, baby," she said, just above a whisper. Her fingers moved through the coins in the wallet now, pushing them with a sort of desperation that was too calm to be called panic. This was practiced. This wasn't the first time she'd done this dance with the register. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. "Can I return the milk? I'll keep the medicine. He needs the medicine." There's a moment in these situations when time doesn't exactly stop, but it glitches. Like a scratched CD. The air feels heavier. Sound seems to slow down. The people behind her in line shifted uncomfortably. One guy checked his phone. Another woman pretended to be fascinated by the gum display. No one wanted to look directly at her. No one wanted to see themselves in her. I knew that feeling too well, because once that had been my mother, because once I had been the kid. The cashier hesitated, eyes flicking to the store manager standing by the cigarettes, then back to the woman. "You already paid for it yesterday," she said gently. "We can refund you, but do you have the receipt?" The woman's shoulders slumped. I think I left it at home. I didn't know I'd need to. I'm sorry. He's been coughing all night and—" "Mom," the boy interrupted softly, tugging at her coat. "It's okay. I'll drink water. I like water." Something inside my chest twisted in a way I hadn't allowed in years. I could hear another voice, much younger, echoing over his. My brother's voice, whiny and tired. "Ma, I'm hungry. Can we have milk, please?" And my mother's frustrated sigh, the slight tremor she tried to hide. "We're out, Danny. I'll get some tomorrow." Tomorrow had been a long time coming. My name is David Rosenfeld. I'm 42 years old. I own several apartment buildings, a chain of small grocery stores on the south side, a handful of strip malls, and more commercial square footage than I ever thought I'd see in my lifetime. To most people, I'm that Jewish landlord, that Jewish guy who owns half this block, or that quiet Jewish millionaire in the black Mercedes. They're not wrong about the last part. I've been called disciplined, cold, efficient, ruthless. I've been called generous and fair. I've been called distant. A few people have called me a miracle for what I built out of nothing. A few others have called me a traitor for leaving the neighborhood where I grew up and never looking back. Very few know about the nights when there was no milk in our fridge. Very few know about my little brother in the Spider-Man pajamas, standing in that tiny kitchen on the west side, shivering because the heat didn't always work, asking for something as simple and impossible as milk. Standing there in that Jewel Osco, watching this woman clutch a gallon of it like it was some luxury she might have to surrender. It was like someone took a chisel to the wall I'd spent decades building around those memories. The cashier sighed. "Look, without the receipt I can't refund you the full amount," she said, "but I can call my manager, see what we can do." The woman nodded, shoulders hunched, eyes glistening. Her lips moved silently, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, maybe both. I wasn't thinking when I stepped out of line. I just moved. "Excuse me," I heard myself say, my voice sounding oddly calm in my own ears. "Add the milk back on, and the cereal." And as I glanced at the boy, who looked at the candy like it was another planet, "And let him pick one treat, anyone he wants." The boy's eyes went wide, big and brown, reflecting the harsh store lighting. The woman's head snapped toward me, suspicion and humiliation warring on her face. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "No, thank you. We're fine." The cashier looked relieved and uncomfortable at the same time, like she'd been hoping I'd say something, and also hoping the woman would accept it so the line could move again. "We're not fine," I said gently, meeting the woman's eyes. "It's okay to not be fine." She stiffened. "We don't take charity," she said, her voice low, though it trembled slightly. "We're just figuring things out." There was that pride again. That same stubborn, painful pride I had seen in my own mother's back when she refused food from neighbors. That same pride that had made my father slam doors instead of accepting help from a cousin who had done well in New York. I lifted my hand slightly, palms open, as if I were approaching a skittish animal. "I respect that," I said. "Truly. Think of it not as charity, but as a stranger paying back an old debt to the universe." The line behind us was growing. Someone exhaled loudly. The manager glanced over, then looked away, recognizing me. He knew who I was. I had helped bail this store out during a rough quarter. I owned the building they were leasing. He wasn't going to interfere. She squinted at me. Up close, I could see the cracked skin around her knuckles. "Why us?" she asked. "Why today?" "Because I saw my childhood in your son's eyes. Because my brother is dead, and I am still trying to figure out how to live with that. Because sometimes life puts a mirror in front of you at the exact moment you're trying not to look." Instead, I gave her the answer I thought she might be able to accept. "Because I can," I said simply. "And because I remember what it's like to choose between medicine and food." Her mouth opened just slightly. The boy looked from her to me, then back again. "Mom," he said, tugging again. "I'm really thirsty." She inhaled shakily, eyes shining. For a second, I thought she would refuse again. Then something in her posture softened, shoulders dropping half an inch. "You can pay for the milk," she said quietly. "Just the milk." I'll pay for all of it, I replied gently. Milk, medicine, cereal, and something small for him. You don't have to do anything in return, just let me do this. Her jaw clenched. She closed her eyes for a moment like she was wrestling with something deep inside, some old belief about what accepting help meant. When she opened them again, there was still resistance there, but also something else, exhaustion. Fine, she whispered. Just this once. She turned to her son. Eli, honey, pick one small thing, okay? Eli. The name hit me in the chest. It was so close to Eliezer, my grandfather's name, the one we'd used during prayers, the one my mother used to whisper when she lit candles on Fridays. The boy darted off to the candy shelves with an energy that felt almost out of place in the heavy air between his mother and me. He hovered between chocolate bars and gummy bears with the seriousness of a man choosing a career path. Thank you, the woman said stiffly, but you don't have to talk to us or anything, just pay and go. I almost laughed at that. Most people, when they see a man in a tailored coat and leather gloves step in, assume he wants something in return, a favor, a photo, a performance of gratitude. I didn't. I wanted something entirely different, to stop feeling like the world was just a series of numbers and contracts and profit margins. I'm not expecting anything, I said. What's your name? She hesitated. Rachel, she said finally. Of course it was Rachel, my mother's name. I felt that glitch in time again, that weird bending around coincidence that doesn't feel like coincidence at all, just a pattern looping back on itself. Nice to meet you, Rachel, I said softly. I'm David. Her eyes flickered over my face, taking in the dark hair showing a bit of grey at the temples, the neatly trimmed beard, the lines around my eyes that years of stress had carved. There was a flicker of recognition there, but not the kind that says, I've seen you on TV. More like, you remind me of something I can't place. Eli came back clutching a small chocolate bar like it was a trophy. This one okay? He asked his mother. She nodded. Say thank you to the man. Thank you, sir, he said, voice shy but clear. Any time, buddy, I replied, forcing a small smile. Make sure you share with your mom, okay? He grinned, missing one front tooth. I will, maybe. The cashier started scanning the items again. Milk, cough syrup, cereal, chocolate bar. She glanced at me as she did, her eyes full of an emotion I didn't want to name. I pulled out my card, the black metal one that always made cashiers do a tiny double take when they felt its weight. Put theirs on mine, I said, and the rest of the cart. My own groceries were unremarkable. Salmon salad mix, some berries, a bottle of good olive oil, almond milk, a loaf of seeded rye bread that always made me think of my grandmother's kitchen. As I tapped my card, I could feel Rachel watching me. What do you do? She asked slowly. It wasn't just curiosity, it was calculation, trying to understand what kind of man buys groceries for strangers. I'm in real estate, I answered. I own some buildings around the city. She nodded like that made sense, like of course someone who could casually pay for extra items would be in real estate. You must do pretty well, she said. Not quite a question, not quite neutral. I've been fortunate, I said. Worked hard, got some breaks. She snorted softly. Must be nice to get breaks. The bitterness in her voice wasn't directed only at me. It was a general statement to the universe. I could have let it go. Most days, I would have. I would have given a polite nod, said, take care, and walked out, pushing my cart, compartmentalizing the scene into a neat little box marked, good deed done, now move on. But something in me refused to file it away this time. Breaks don't always look like breaks when they show up, I said quietly. Sometimes they look like the worst day of your life. She frowned. Yeah, well, This definitely feels like one of those. The cashier handed her the receipt, then put her bagged items into a cart for her. Rachel took it with a sigh, her hands shaking slightly. Eli grabbed the bag with the chocolate and held it close, like someone might change their mind and take it back. We were blocking the line. People slipped past us with that particular kind of impatience that tries to disguise itself as indifference. I stepped aside with her, pushing my own cart next to hers. "You live nearby?" I asked. She narrowed her eyes. "Why?" I shrugged lightly. "Because it's freezing outside, and you're about to walk with a sick kid and a heavy bag. I have a car. I can give you a ride." She almost laughed. "Yeah, that's not happening. You could be a serial killer for all I know." "Fair point," I said. "If it makes you feel better, the manager knows me. You can ask him, or we can just walk in the same direction for a bit, and you can ditch me at any corner." She stared at me for a long moment, weighing discomfort against practicality. "We live in Uptown," she said finally. "On Wilson, I'll take the bus." Uptown. My pulse kicked up a notch. That neighborhood had once been my entire world. The cracked sidewalks, the faded brick buildings, the streetlights that flickered on and off, like they were debating whether to show up for work that night. "I know Uptown well," I replied. "My family used to live there." For the briefest moment, something passed over her face, a shadow, a flicker, recognition again, deeper this time, as if the puzzle pieces were sliding closer together. "Rosenfeld," she repeated slowly, tasting the name I'd given. "There used to be a Rosenfeld family in my building when I was a kid." My heart skipped, then pounded. "Your building?" I asked. "On Wilson?" She nodded. "Yeah, west side of the street. Across from the laundromat and that tiny bakery that always smelled like bread but never had any customers. I knew exactly which building she meant, because I had grown up there, because my brother had grown up there, because my brother had died not far from there." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The store sounds, beeping scanners, carts rattling, kids whining, faded into a dull hum. For a moment, it was just me, Rachel, her son, and that address hanging in the air between us like a ghost that didn't believe in staying dead. "I grew up in that building," I said quietly. "Apartment 3B. Her eyes widened. You're one of them. You're from the Rosenfeld family?" My tongue felt thick in my mouth. Old images came rushing back, the narrow stairwell, the smell of boiled cabbage from the downstairs neighbor, the sound of my parents arguing in hushed, tired voices behind closed doors. "Yeah," I said, "that's me." She stared at me like I was a photograph come to life. "I knew your brother," she said softly. "Daniel." The name crashed into me with the force of a truck, and everything inside me that I had kept carefully, ruthlessly under control for over a decade began to crack. I couldn't speak at first. The air felt too thick, like I was trying to breathe underwater. Hearing Daniel's name out loud, spoken by a stranger. No, not a stranger. Someone who had known him in a way I didn't expect. Unsettled something deep in me. Rachel didn't seem to realize what she'd dropped into my chest. She wasn't looking for a reaction. She was simply stating a memory. But for me, it was like she'd reached into a drawer I kept locked for years and pulled everything out onto the floor. "You knew him?" I finally managed, my voice lower than I intended. She nodded. "Yeah. We were kids. Everyone knew everyone in that building. Daniel used to play with my cousins in the courtyard." She paused, studying my face. "He was sweet." She said the word softly, with a kind of reverence people reserve for memories that didn't have time to turn bitter. Always making jokes, always trying to make the little kids laugh. I swallowed hard. That sounded like him. That sounded exactly like the boy I remembered, before life started crushing him in ways even I hadn't fully understood. Yeah, I said quietly. He was like that. She tilted her head slightly. You two were close. Close. The word clanged against me like metal. We were brothers, but we weren't close. Not the way we should have been. Not the way he wanted. I was older, by 6 years. Old enough to feel responsible, but young enough to resent the weight of that responsibility. And when I left the neighborhood, when I got that first chance to escape, I took it without looking back, without checking if he was following, without asking if he even could follow. I don't know if close is the right word, I said, staring at the floor tiles. We were complicated. Rachel didn't push. She just nodded like she understood something about complicated families. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. He came by our apartment once, she said. Years later, after your family moved out. He was looking for you. For a moment I forgot how to stand. My hands tightened around the cart handle until my knuckles turned white. What do you mean he was looking for me? I asked, careful, quiet, terrified to hear the answer. Rachel frowned in thought, trying to remember something distant. I must have been 19, maybe 20. He looked older, tired. He knocked on our door, asked if anyone had your number. My mum told him we hadn't seen you in years. He seemed disappointed. Disappointed. The word hit me harder than any insult or punch ever could. He didn't tell you why? I asked, barely above a whisper. She shook her head. No. He just said he needed to talk to you. He left right after. I remember thinking he looked like he was carrying the whole world on his back. He'd been 22 then. The same age I was when I first felt like I had control over my life, but for him, 22 had already been the beginning of the end. I didn't know he'd tried to find me. No one had ever told me. My parents never said a word. I found out about his death the way people find out about bad weather, late, and with the sickening realization that there had been warnings I ignored. I didn't know, I said, voice cracking. Rachel! I didn't know he came looking for me. She stared at me, her expression softening, the sharpness of earlier fading. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I thought you knew. I didn't mean to bring up something painful. You didn't bring it up, I said, shaking my head. I've been carrying it the whole time. For a moment, we both stood there in the grocery store, surrounded by the noise of checkout scanners and the hum of refrigerators, as if trapped inside a bubble where time moved differently. Eli tugged at his mother's sleeve again, but even he seemed to sense something heavy was happening. Rachel placed a hand lightly on the cart handle, grounding herself. Look, we should get going. It's getting late. Let me drive you, I said again. But this time my voice was softer, more vulnerable. Not because you need it, but because I need something. I don't even know what. Closure? Redemption? A chance to understand something I've avoided for too long. She looked at me for a long moment, searching my face, maybe trying to decide if I was dangerous or sincere. Maybe both. You said you're in real estate, she said finally. Which properties? I told her a few street names. Her eyes widened slowly. You own the building on Sheridan? She asked. Yeah. She let out a humorless laugh. I've cleaned apartments in that building years ago, before I had Eli. Life is strange that way, looping people together in invisible threads long before they ever realize they're connected. You won't hurt us? She asked suddenly, bluntly. No, I said firmly. Never. Eli looked up at me then, the innocence in his eyes cutting through every protective layer I'd built around myself. "Mom," he whispered, tugging her coat again, "my chest hurts." Rachel's face tightened with concern. "I know, baby. We'll get you home." That settled it. "Let me drive you," I repeated more gently this time. "I'm not asking for anything, just let me help you get through tonight." Rachel exhaled, long and shaky, like she was releasing a decade of tightly held instincts. "Okay," she said finally. "Just a ride." We left the store together, the automatic doors sliding open as a rush of cold wind whipped into our faces. Snowflakes drifted down in slow spirals. The parking lot was slick, shining under the streetlights. My Mercedes sat near the front, black and polished, completely out of place compared to the rusted sedans and dented minivans around it. Rachel hesitated when she saw it. Understandable. I unlocked the doors without saying anything. Eli climbed in first, shivering. Rachel helped him buckle, then slid into the passenger seat, still looking like she wasn't entirely convinced she'd made the right decision. The heater blasted warm air. I pulled out slowly, giving her time to adjust. "Do you live alone?" I asked gently. "No," she said, "just me and Eli." Her eyes stayed focused out the window, scanning the streets as though memorizing the escape routes. "You said you lost your job?" I asked. She nodded. "Cutbacks, restaurant business, winter's always bad. They let half the staff go." I nodded. "It's a brutal industry." "And you?" she asked. "What's your story, besides being, well?" She gestured vaguely at the expensive interior of the car. This, I repeated with a small, sad smile. "Took a long time, a lot of work, a lot of mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" she asked. "Ones I can't undo," I said simply. She didn't push. She didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy but honest. We turned onto Wilson Avenue, passing the same cracked sidewalks I used to run down as a kid, the same streetlights that flickered at random. It felt like driving into an old photograph. The buildings rose like ghosts of my past, each one holding a memory I'd tried to bury. And then I saw it. Her building. My building. The bricks were the same faded red. The balcony rails were the same rusted metal. Even the graffiti under the stairs looked like it hadn't changed in 15 years. My stomach twisted. Rachel noticed. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just remembering." We parked. She gathered her bags, but I reached into my back seat and grabbed the second bag the cashier had given me, the one with food I'd bought quietly while she wasn't looking. Fruits, soup, bread, things a sick kid could eat. She eyed it suspiciously. "What's that?" "Just a few extras," I said. "Take them." She shook her head. "David, no. I said just this once." "It is just this once," I said gently. "Take it, Rachel. Please." She opened her mouth to argue, but Eli spoke first. "Mom," he said, coughing, "can we go inside? I'm cold." And just like that, the argument died. Rachel nodded reluctantly and took the bag. "Thank you," she said quietly, almost grudgingly. "You're welcome," I replied. "If you need anything else—" "We don't," she cut in quickly. "We'll be fine." She opened the car door and then paused. "By the way," she said, turning back to me with a slightly softer voice, "your brother, he really did love you, even when you left. He talked about you a lot." My heart twisted sharply. "How do you know?" I asked. She swallowed, her eyes glistened. "Because he told me once, on the night he came looking for you. The night he came looking for me." "I asked him why he came by," she continued softly. "He said, 'I just want David to know I'm trying.'" The world blurred. I inhaled, trying to steady myself, but it wasn't enough. The truth hit too hard, too fast. "Rachel," I whispered, "I didn't know. I swear to you I didn't know." She nodded. "I believe you." Eli tugged on her again. She turned to lead him inside. I watched them disappear into the old brick building, and as the door closed behind them, the same heavy, squealing metal door I'd pushed open hundreds of times as a boy, something in me cracked for good. I had spent years building a life of steel and stone and sharp edges, but one woman returning a gallon of milk had pulled a thread I didn't even know was loose, and everything inside me was starting to unravel. I sat there with the engine running long after Rachel and Eli disappeared up the stairwell. The building door slammed shut the same way it always had when I was a boy. The heavy metal echo bouncing down the hallway, vibrating through my bones like some old memory refusing to stay buried. The snow kept falling, gathering on the windshield, melting in the heat of the defroster, sliding down in slow rivulets that made the streetlights blur. My breath came out shaky, uneven. I hadn't cried in years. I'd trained myself out of it. But right then, behind the wheel of a car that represented everything I'd built to escape this place, I felt the sting behind my eyes. I didn't want to drive away. Some irrational part of me felt like if I did, I'd be abandoning Daniel all over again. But sitting there made no sense either. I wasn't part of their lives. Rachel didn't owe me anything. Eli didn't know me, and nothing I did tonight could rewrite the past. Still, I couldn't move. After a long minute, I finally put the car in gear. I drove slowly, turning right onto Broadway, past old shops that had changed names but not owners, past the bus stop where I used to freeze in winters, just like this one, past the alley where my brother once got jumped for wearing the wrong colors on the wrong day. The city felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown too big for it. As I drove, Rachel's voice replayed in my head. "He came looking for you. He needed to talk to you. He said he was trying. Trying what? Trying to get clean, trying to get out, trying to fix something, trying not to fall apart." I gripped the steering wheel so tight my hands cramped. The guilt tasted metallic, bitter. I drove aimlessly for half an hour, circling blocks I hadn't seen in years. When I finally regained my breath enough to think, I realized where I had stopped. The cemetery. I hadn't driven here consciously. Muscle memory had done the work. Or maybe something in me wanted this confrontation more than I realized. I parked outside the gates, turned off the car, and sat in the silence. The snow was heavier now, falling in thick flakes that softened the edges of the headstones beyond the fence. My breath fogged in front of me as I walked through the gates, the cold biting sharply at my cheeks. I didn't visit often, maybe twice in the last decade, maybe less. Daniel's headstone was simple. I'd paid for it myself, but I'd chosen something plain, convinced at the time that understated meant respectful. Now it just looked like a confession, a quiet apology carved in stone. I brushed snow off the top with my gloved hand. Daniel Rosenfeld, beloved son and brother, beloved, a word I hadn't earned. "I didn't know you came looking for me," I said quietly, the words swallowing themselves in the winter air. "I didn't know, Danny." The nickname slipped out without permission. I hadn't said it aloud in years. It felt like a ghost on my tongue. "I would have been there," I said, "if I'd known, if someone had told me, if you'd called again, if you'd—" My voice faltered. "If I hadn't been too wrapped up in my own life to notice you were falling." The cemetery was silent except for the snow landing softly around me. My breath clouded in front of me like a confession. "I built all of this," I whispered. "The buildings, the stores, the investments, and I never stopped to ask if any of it mattered if you weren't here to see it." A gust of wind blew snow onto the headstone again. I brushed it away. "I just wanted to survive," I continued. "You know that, right? I just wanted to get out. I thought if I escaped, you'd follow. I thought you were stronger than the neighborhood. Stronger than... I swallowed. Stronger than the things that pulled you under. I closed my eyes. You were always the one who made everyone laugh. You were always the one who held the pieces together when Mum couldn't. You deserved better. The cold seeped into my bones. My chest ached. I hadn't allowed myself to feel any of this in years, because feeling it meant admitting the truth. I had abandoned him. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but abandon is still abandon, even when wrapped in excuses. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "I'm sorry for all of it." Alone. I stayed there until the snow soaked into my coat, until the cold numbed my hands, until I felt emptied out enough to breathe again. When I finally walked back to the car, I felt lighter and heavier at the same time, as if I'd opened something that could never be closed again. But life doesn't pause when consciences wake up. The world keeps moving. The next morning, I drove to my office in River North, a sleek glass building where the lobby always smelled like fresh coffee and new carpet. My assistant, Claire, was already at her desk when I stepped out of the elevator. "You're early," she said, surprised. "Rough night?" "You could say that," I replied. She handed me my schedule, but I wasn't really seeing the words. My thoughts were somewhere else, on Rachel, on Eli, on the sound of that boy coughing in the back seat, on the way Rachel's voice had softened at the end, just enough to let a piece of truth slip through. "Before you go into your meeting," Claire said, interrupting my thoughts, "you have a message. Came through the general office line. A woman named..." She glanced at her notes. "Rachel Mills." My heart lurched. "She said she needs to thank you again," Claire added, "and she said she might need a reference for a job interview." I took a slow breath. "Did she leave a number?" Claire nodded and handed me a sticky note. I stared at the digits. For a long moment, I didn't move. I knew I should call immediately, offer her something better than whatever she thought she had to chase. But I hesitated, not because I didn't want to help, because helping her felt too close to helping my younger self, too close to the guilt I hadn't finished unpacking. But another thought came. What if this was the moment I didn't run, the moment I did what I couldn't do for Daniel? I stepped into my office and closed the door. I dialed the number. "Hello," she answered, voice cautious. "It's David," I said, "from the store." "Oh," a pause. "Hi. You said you needed a reference?" I asked gently. "Yeah," she said, sounding embarrassed. "I have an interview at a call center. It's not great, but it's steady. They want someone who can vouch for me." "I can be that," I said, "but I have another idea." Silence. Then, "What kind of idea?" "I own a few businesses," I said slowly. "One of them is an office on Sheridan. We've been needing someone reliable for admin work, filing, scheduling, customer calls. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, benefits, set hours." She didn't answer at first. "Rachel?" I asked. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because I can," I said, "and because you're trying, and trying deserves a chance." She exhaled shakily. I could picture her hand over her mouth, trying not to cry. "When would you need someone?" she asked. "Monday," I said. "But if that's too soon..." "No," she interrupted quickly. "Monday is perfect." We went over details, salary, hours, expectations. She listened carefully, asked smart questions. She wasn't desperate, she was determined. There's a difference. When we hung up, I sat back in my chair, feeling something shift inside me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from my past. I felt like I was walking towards something. 3 days later, Rachel arrived for her first day of work. She wore a plain blouse and clean jeans, hair pulled back neatly. Eli wasn't with her. He was at home with her neighbor, she said, and without him, she looked older somehow. Tired, but hopeful. You look nervous, I said. I am, she admitted. It's been a long time since someone trusted me with anything important. You'll do fine, I said. Come on, I'll show you around. As we walked through the office together, I noticed something unexpected. The employees smiled at her. Not politely, genuinely. It was as if she brought a different kind of energy into the room. Soft but resilient, worn but unbreakable. When I returned to my office, Claire raised an eyebrow. She's a good hire, she said. You have a good instinct for people. I didn't say anything, because it wasn't instinct. It was recognition, not just of Rachel, of the version of myself I used to be, the version of Daniel who never got the chance to grow out of the place that shaped us. Helping her didn't erase anything. It didn't change the past, but it did something else. It shifted the weight, just slightly, just enough. That afternoon, when Rachel came into my office with a question about paperwork, she paused at the doorway. You okay? She asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. I think I'm starting to be. She smiled softly, not a grateful smile, not an obligated one, but one that acknowledged something unspoken between us. A shared history, a shared wound, a shared chance at something new. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone in the city that had both broken me and made me. I felt like the past wasn't chasing me anymore. It was finally catching up so it could let me go. On Friday evening, just before closing the office, I found Rachel standing by the window, looking out at the streetlights flickering on one by one as dusk settled over Sheridan Road. She didn't hear me at first. Her arms were crossed loosely, her posture relaxed but thoughtful. There was something about the way she stood there, the quiet strength of someone who's had to rebuild their life more than once, that made me pause. When she finally noticed me, she offered a small, tired smile. I didn't mean to lurk, she said. I was just thinking. About what? She shrugged lightly. About how fast things can change. 1 week ago, I was returning a gallon of milk. Now I'm... She gestured at the office. Here. You did it, I said. You showed up, you worked, you earned your place. She shook her head. No, David. You gave me a chance. Everyone needs a chance, I said quietly. Some people just never get one. She studied me closely, her eyes sharper than I expected. Is that how you feel about your brother? The question cut through me like a blade, not cruelly, but with precision. She wasn't prying. She was acknowledging the truth we'd been tiptoeing around all week. I walked slowly to the window and stood beside her. The glass was cold against my palm. He was a good kid, I said, a better person than I ever was, but he never had doors opening for him. He didn't get early breaks or mentors or the chance to get out before the streets swallowed him. And you did, she said. I nodded. Yeah, and I ran, without looking back. She turned her head slightly. Most people would have done the same. Try telling that to my conscience, I said. Silence settled between us, soft and a little heavy, the kind of silence that's not uncomfortable, just honest. Rachel looked back out the window. You know, Danny talked about you more than you think, she said. Even when he was older. When things were getting bad. My chest tightened. What did he say? That he wanted you to be proud of him. She swallowed, her voice lowering. He said he didn't want to show up at your fancy new place until he'd fixed his life. Until he wasn't an embarrassment. The words hit me like a punch. I closed my eyes and breathed through the ache. He was never an embarrassment, I said. He was my brother. Rachel nodded gently, but she didn't argue. She didn't tell me what I should have done or what I could have changed. She wasn't interested in punishing me. She was offering something else, understanding. When she finally turned around to gather her things, she hesitated. "I didn't know if I should tell you this," she said, "but I will, because it might help." She took a breath. "That night he came to our apartment, he said something to me before he left." I braced myself. "What?" He said, "I think my brother's doing okay. That means I will too. I just need him to know I'm trying." I felt my throat close. The floor seemed to shift under my feet. I gripped the window ledge to steady myself. "You're sure he said that?" I whispered. "I'll never forget it," she said. "The way he said it, like he was holding on to that one thread of hope." For a moment I couldn't speak. Every apology I'd ever rehearsed in silence, every guilt I'd stuffed down into the quiet parts of my chest, every night I convinced myself the past didn't matter, it all came roaring back with brutal clarity. But this time, the pain felt different. Sharper, yes, but cleaner, like something infected was finally draining. "So maybe," Rachel said softly, "maybe you weren't a failure as a brother. Maybe you were the one thing he believed in, even when he couldn't believe in himself." I covered my eyes with my hand briefly, pretending to rub away fatigue, but really just trying to hide the tears gathering there. When I lowered my hand, she looked at me with a gentle knowing, not pity. "You're doing something good, David," she said. "Not for me, for you, and maybe for him too." I inhaled deeply, letting her words settle. "I don't want to repeat history," I said, "not with anyone." "You won't," she said simply. She gathered her bag and turned to leave. As she reached the doorway, Eli barreled in, his little footsteps echoing in the hallway. His cough had almost disappeared. The medicine must have finally kicked in. He ran straight to Rachel, grabbing her hand. "Mom, look! I made a dragon!" He held up a crumpled piece of paper, covered in bright green scribbles. "That's beautiful," she said, smoothing his hair lovingly. He looked at me then, shy but curious. "Hi, Mr. David," he said. "Do you like dragons?" I crouched slightly to meet his eyes. "I do," I said. "Very much." He nodded, satisfied. Kids never ask complicated questions unless adults teach them how. His innocence was like a balm on a wound I didn't know how to close. Rachel took his hand and started toward the exit. Before leaving, she glanced back at me. "See you Monday," she said. "See you," I replied. The elevator dinged as they stepped inside. Eli waved through the narrowing crack of the doors. I lifted my hand in return. When they were gone, I stood alone in the quiet office, letting everything settle. The guilt, the relief, the strange new softness in the air. Something was shifting inside me, slowly but unmistakably. A rhythm, a pattern I'd ignored for years was making itself known. Cause and effect, past and present, pain and healing. The polarities weren't fighting anymore. They were trading places, finding balance. I locked up the office and stepped into the crisp evening air. A breeze carried the smell of snow and car exhaust and roasted nuts from a street vendor downstairs. Chicago always had a way of mixing grit with warmth. As I walked to my car, I realized something simple but profound. Helping Rachel hadn't erased my past. It hadn't resurrected my brother or rewritten the years I lost. But it had done something maybe even more important. It interrupted the cycle. It shifted the direction of the story I'd been unconsciously repeating. I wasn't trying to save anyone. I was finally allowing myself to show up. And in doing so, I had stepped out of the shadow I'd built around my heart. I unlocked the car and slid behind the wheel. Before starting the engine, I whispered something I hadn't said since I was a teenager, lighting candles next to my mother. "Danny, I hope you see this. I hope you know I'm still trying too." The engine hummed to life. The city lights blurred in streaks of gold and orange as I pulled into traffic. A familiar heaviness lifted. Not gone, just lighter, manageable. Life keeps moving, pain keeps teaching, hearts keep healing in ways we never expect. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. And share your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to hear your stories too, because sometimes the smallest moments, a gallon of milk, a stranger's kindness, a memory you can't escape, are the ones that change everything.